I have always believed that every strange event has a logical explanation, but after what happened to me, I don't look out my bedroom window after midnight anymore. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 26 years old, and until recently, I lived in a small apartment in Cedar Falls. I had just started a new job as a software engineer. The apartment wasn't anything special. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a living room with old wooden floors that creaked every time I walked across them. The rent was surprisingly cheap, but I didn't question it. I was just happy to find a place close to work. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet. There were only a few street lights, and after 10 at night, the streets became completely empty. The first week was perfect. Everything felt normal until the eighth night. At exactly 3:12 in the morning, I woke up. I wasn't sure why. There was no loud noise, no nightmare, nothing. I simply opened my eyes. The room was dark except for the pale moonlight shining through my bedroom window. I checked my phone. 3:12 a.m. I sighed, rolled over, and tried to go back to sleep. The next night, the exact same thing happened. Again, 3:12 a.m. This time I stayed awake for a few minutes. The apartment was silent. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it was stress from my new job and went back to sleep. The third night, I woke up again 3:12 a.m. Something felt different. I had the strange feeling that someone was watching me. You know that feeling you get when you can sense another person's eyes on you. That's exactly how I felt. I slowly sat up in bed. The room was silent. I looked toward the bedroom door, nothing. Then I looked at the window. The curtains were slightly open, just enough to see outside. Under the only working street light, a man was standing perfectly still. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was talking on the phone. But something about him didn't feel right. He wasn't moving, not even a little. His arms hung at his sides. His head was tilted slightly towards my apartment, as if he was staring directly at my bedroom window. I watched him for nearly a minute. He never blinked, he never shifted his weight, he never looked away. Finally, I closed the curtain. It's just some random guy, I whispered to myself. I climbed back into bed and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I looked outside before leaving for work. The street was empty. There was no sign that anyone had been there. I laughed at myself. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing that night. At exactly 3:12 a.m., my eyes opened. Without thinking, I reached my phone. 3:12. My heart sank slowly. I turned toward the window. The curtain was still slightly open. The streetlight illuminated the road below, and there he was, the same man, standing in the exact same place, wearing the exact same dark coat, looking directly at my bedroom. I don't know why he looking directly at my apartment. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I grabbed my phone from the bedside table. If he's really there, I whispered to myself, I will take a picture. I opened the camera. My hands were shaking. I pointed the phone toward the window. I looked at the screen. The street was empty. I lowered the phone and looked through the window with my own eyes. The man was still there. I lifted the phone again. Nothing. No one. Just an empty street. I lowered it once more. The man appeared again. I repeated it 3 times. Every single time I could see him from my eyes, but my phone showed absolutely nothing. I barely slept for the rest of the night. The next morning, I convinced myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. The next night, I decided I wasn't going to let fear control me. If the man appeared again, I was calling the police. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up. Before I even checked my phone, I already knew the time. I slowly walked to the window. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it. I pulled the curtain aside. The man was there, exactly where he had been every other night. He was still staring at my apartment. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered. 911. What's your emergency? There's a man standing outside my apartment. Is he threatening you? No, he's just standing there. How long has he been there? For several nights. The dispatcher asked me for my address and told me officers were on the way. I kept watching the man. He never moved. About 5 minutes later, flashing blue and red lights appeared at the end of the street. Two police officers stepped out of their patrol car. I pointed toward the street. He's right there. The officers looked exactly where I was pointing. Then one of them turned towards my building and frowned. Sir, I don't see anyone. My heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? He's standing right there. One officer came upstairs to speak with me. He looked around the apartment. Nothing seemed out of place. As he was leaving, he paused at the front door. He looked back at me. Keep your curtains closed tonight. You have seen them. Before I could ask what he meant, he walked away. I locked the door behind him. For the first time since moving into the apartment, I truly felt afraid. I didn't sleep after the police left. Every sound inside the apartment made me jump. The old wooden floors creaked, the refrigerator hummed, the pipes in the walls clicked every few minutes. I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe stress, maybe I was imagining everything, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. The next morning, I decided I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. I called my landlord and told him I wanted to end my lease early. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he quietly asked, Did you see him? I felt my heart stop. What did you just say? The man outside your window. I couldn't speak. How do you know about him? The landlord sighed. You aren't the first tenant to call me. Then why didn't you tell me before I moved in? Because nobody believes the story until they see him themselves. My hands started shaking. What story? He took a deep breath. About 15 years ago, a man lived in your apartment. He became obsessed with watching the street every night. Neighbors said he kept talking about someone standing under the streetlight. They thought he had lost his mind. One night, he disappeared. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no body. He was simply gone. I sat in complete silence. Before hanging up, the landlord said one last thing. If you see him again, whatever you do, don't wave. The call ended. That night, I packed my clothes into two suitcases. I planned to leave before midnight. I didn't care if I had to sleep in my car. I just wanted to get away. At 11:45 p.m., I carried my first suitcase downstairs. As I reached the front door of the building, I looked across the street. The street light was empty. I smiled to myself. Maybe it was finally over. I loaded the suitcase into my car and went back upstairs for the second one. When I entered my apartment, everything was exactly as I had left it, except the bedroom curtain was open. I walked toward the window. My phone buzzed. 3:12 a.m. The screen lit up by itself. No notification, no call, just the line 3:12. My hands became cold. I looked outside. The man was standing there, closer than ever before. Not across the street, not on the sidewalk. He was standing directly below my bedroom window. His face was still hidden in the darkness. Then, for the first time, he moved. He slowly raised one hand and waved. I remembered the landlord's warning, don't wave. I stepped back from the window. My breathing became faster. Then I heard something that made every hair on my body stand up. Three slow knocks. Tap, tap, tap. Not on the front door, not on the bedroom door, on the bedroom window. I lived on the third floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, nothing outside that window. A man was standing outside the glass. His feet weren't on anything. He wasn't climbing. He wasn't hanging. He was simply standing in the air. His face was inches from mine. His smile stretched unnaturally wide. His eyes never blinked. He lifted one finger and pointed behind me. I froze. Every instinct told me not to turn around, but I couldn't stop myself slowly. I looked over my shoulder. My bedroom door was open. I was certain I had locked it. The hallway beyond it was completely dark. A whisper drifted from the darkness now. He can come inside. The lights in my apartment went out. Everything became silent. When the police entered the apartment the next morning, my phone was lying on the bedroom floor. The wallet was still on the kitchen table. My car keys were beside the front door. But I was gone. No signs of a struggle, no broken windows, no blood, nothing. The apartment was rented again 3 months later. The new tenant moved into the bedroom. Everything was normal until the eighth night. At exactly 3:12 a.m., he looked out of the window and saw a man standing perfectly still under the streetlight, watching him. Some people believe every haunted place has a ghost. I don't. I think some places don't keep ghosts, they keep victims, and every once in a while they choose another one.